الشمس صحيت من نومي بلا تشاو بلا تشاو بلا تشاو 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 عشوق الشمس صحيت من نومي وكان بيزحف العالم يقاوم خدني أنا وأنت سويا بلا تشاو بلا تشاو بلا تشاو 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 يا مقاوم خدني أنا وأنت سويا إحساسي إني حكون شاهد كنت شهيدا لا أقاوم بلا تشاو بلا تشاو بلا تشاو 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 سقطت شهيدا وأنا أقاوم يكفي بإيدك تدفني في أعلى جبل بلا تشاو بلا تشاو بلا تشاو 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 بإيدك تدفني في أعلى جبل لاحظ قلبي يجمل ورد كل البشر من حدي بلا تشاو بلا تشاو بلا تشاو 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 يا كل البشر يمر من حدي يعطوني اسم شمل وردة هاي الوردة وردة مقاوم بلا تشاو بلا تشاو بلا تشاو 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 هاي الوردة وردة مقاوم سقط من أجل الحرية.
Well, welcome. What a wonderful way to start. Palestinian version of Bella Ciao, a truly revolutionary liberatory song. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Good evening. Welcome. I'm Mimi Rosenberg for the Ida B. Wells Media Defense Network. And I can't think of a better way to start decolonizing the American mind than a specific quote from Malcolm X. The press, said Malcolm, is so powerful in its image-making role that it can make the criminal look like he's the victim and make the victim look like he's the criminal. If you're not careful, that's what'll happen. The newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. And as Mumia Abu Jamal has reminded us, through decades of imprisonment, resistance, and truth-telling, every struggle for freedom is also a struggle over who gets to tell the story. Tonight's gathering is not simply about a film. It's not simply about a book. It's not simply about Palestine or Cuba or Venezuela. It is about power. It is about how power manufactures consent, colonizes consciousness, and shapes what people come to believe is possible, acceptable, moral, and true. Because colonialism, it's not merely the occupation of land. It's the occupation of memory, the occupation of history, the occupation of language, the occupation of imagination, the occupation of public consciousness, the occupation of the mind. Before wars are launched, populations are conditioned. Before a genocide can be normalized, language must be manipulated. Victims become aggressors. Occupation becomes self-defense. Resistance becomes terrorism. And those who expose the truth become the problem. And this isn't accidental. It is systemic. It is systematic. It is political. The issue before us is not simply media bias. The issue is the machinery of power involving governments, corporations, lobbying organizations, think tanks, universities, technology companies, and media institutions that help shape public understanding of the world. And nowhere is that machinery more visible than in shaping American understanding of Palestine. For decades, Palestinians have struggled not only against military occupation, but against narrative occupation, against efforts to erase history, sanitize colonialism, criminalize resistance, and transform the colonized into the accused, while the colonizer becomes the victim. What we are discussing tonight is not a conspiracy, it's a system, and the consequences are unfolding before our eyes. Consider Mahmoud Khalil, targeted for deportation because of political speech connected to a liberation struggle. Consider students suspended, professors investigated, and events canceled on campuses that claim to champion academic freedom. Consider organizations such as Code Pink, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, Answer, the People's Forum, labor activists, immigrant rights organizers, independent journalists, and Palestinian solidarity activists, increasingly subjected to surveillance, doxing, political attacks, smear campaigns, and efforts to portray dissent as extremism, nay, as terrorism. The objective is not always to defeat a movement. The objective is to create fear, to isolate people, to fragment solidarity, to convince people that silence is safer than resistance. That's how modern McCarthyism functions. Through intimidation, through surveillance, through economic and political retaliation, the message is simple. Journalism that serves power is rewarded. Journalism that challenges power becomes dangerous. That is why the Ida B. Wells Media Defense Network was created, not because one journalist was attacked, not because one activist was arrested, but because we recognize a pattern, a systematic effort to narrow democratic space, discipline dissent, and shape public consciousness in ways that protect concentrated political and economic power. Ida B. Wells understood that the struggle against lynching required a struggle against the lies that justified lynching. Likewise, the struggle against colonialism requires a struggle against the narratives that justify colonialism. The struggle against war requires a struggle against the propaganda that manufactures consent for war. And the struggle for liberation requires a struggle against the occupation of the mind. That is why this evening matters. Tonight's film and discussion are acts of political literacy. They help us understand the mechanisms of propaganda, censorship, surveillance, and repression, because the occupation of the American mind is organized. Our response must thus be organized as well. The answer to organized propaganda must be organized truth. The answer to organized repression must be organized resistance. The answer to isolated attacks must be collective defense. And that is why we seek to bring together journalists, lawyers, students, scholars, artists, labor activists, organizers, and movements, boots on the ground for justice, to defend freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and political expression, not merely to preserve dissent, but to expand it. Because if the occupation of the mind is collective, then liberation must be collective as well. So tonight, we examine the machinery, we examine the methods, we examine how power protects itself. And tonight, we continue the work of dismantling it. So let us watch, let us learn, let us organize, Let us question and let us continue this struggle to decolonize the American mind. And we begin.